All right, man, peace. People continue to be incredulous as to why Paul George made the decision that he made to remain with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's very apparent to me why he made that decision. It's because he's able to make the distinction between Russell Westbrook and LeBron James. He understands that LeBron James is obviously a better player than Russell Westbrook, but they both play in the same mold, that being the Oscar Robertson paradigm, which LeBron James has taken to a whole other level. Russell Westbrook is operating about a half level below the proficiency level of Oscar Robertson. And Paul George really only ever wanted to play for the Lakers. But he understands that if I'm going to be on a team where I'm not going to win a championship, I might as well be in a place where I have a very good rapport with a player who is not as good as LeBron, but we're also not going to win a championship. So why go somewhere where I'm going to get all the blame? At least if I stay in OKC, I know that Russell's going to get all the blame, or at least start to get some of the blame. If we don't win, I'm not going to get much of the blame. But if I play with LeBron James and we don't win the championship, which we won't because we're playing in an era with a dynastic team, they're going to try to blame me. And it wouldn't shock me if Paul George or a person in his management contacted either Chris Bosh or Kevin Love or Isaiah Thomas or Jay Crowder and got the skinny on LeBron James and decided that he was a little bit more trouble than what he's worth. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
But first, Paul George talked to Short Story Long Podcast about his decision to stay in OKC and how the Lakers responded to being left out in the cold without so much as a meeting. PG said, quote, LA was pissed at me. I didn't give Magic a meeting, which I understand.
And I don't blame you for not giving Magic Johnson a meeting. Because that man, Magic Johnson, he could sell an ice cube to a penguin. There's no doubt about that. You don't want to be in a room with Magic Johnson with him trying to win you over, because there's no doubt in my mind that he will. Especially if you're someone who I think is a little bit mentally weak, like a Paul George. When I say mentally weak, I'm not talking about from an indecisive perspective. I'm just talking about he's someone who can be easily swayed. I think that he knew that he wanted to go back to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but I think that he also knows that he has an inclination towards wanting to make people happy. And if he was to sit down in a room with Magic Johnson and Magic put that charm on him, who knows what might happen. So he made the right decision. It's almost like not answering a text message from one of your old flames. You don't want to go down that road again. You already know what that's about. I think that Paul George understands what he's getting into if he were to sign with the LA Lakers, and it just wasn't going to be worth it.
But at that point, I knew I wanted to give it another shot. I didn't want to prolong it and waste people's time. Frank, do you think he'll regret not giving the Lakers more of a chance to court him, especially that LeBron's there?
Yeah,
I think that Paul George will regret it only if the Lakers win a championship over the next 3 to 4 seasons. If they don't win a championship, he'll look back and he'll say, I made the right decision.
And it seemed to be a fait accompli. And all season long, all we heard was it's going to be LeBron and Paul George. To me, that was one of the most surprising things about free agency, how quickly it happened that he returned to Oklahoma City. I wonder if he looks at LeBron, it's hard to believe, and maybe he thinks, well, LeBron's going to be 34 in December. I'm with Russell Westbrook, a much younger player.
Not only that, I think that he looks at LeBron and he says LeBron is the best player in our league offensively, and he can't beat the Golden State Warriors. And once again, I believe that either he or a member of his management has spoken to players who played with LeBron James, and they've told him, look, LeBron's a great player, but it can be very laborious to play with him because you're going to get all the blame, very little of the credit, and LeBron is going to marginalize you because he can only play at one type of offense. It has to all go through him. And I think that Paul George sat back, he weighed the pros versus the cons, and everything weighed in favor of him staying in OKC. Plus, I think that he likes the environment in Oklahoma City better than Los Angeles.
I, kind of talked my way out of Indiana. Do I really want to now leave another team? And his reputation took a bit of a hit when he left Indiana.
I don't think that his reputation would have taken a hit if he would have left Oklahoma City. I think that he was more concerned with the environment that he would have been heading into. Strangely enough, I think that Paul George would have more likely ended up with the Lakers had LeBron not been there. Say had the Lakers been able to pull off that trade for Kawhi Leonard, I think that Paul George would have been more likely to sign there than with LeBron James. Many of us thought, myself included, that Paul George admired LeBron because they would oftentimes hug after the game, things of that nature. But many of the so-called friendships in the NBA are pseudo-friendships. A lot of these guys are actors. As Shaquille O'Neal states so well, so astutely, the NBA stands for nothing but actors. So we really never know who are friends and who are frenemies or who are just workplace buddies. You never know until the smoke clears. And I think that many of the players are watching how these finals go, how they transpire between the Golden State Warriors and a LeBron James-led team, and they say to themselves, LeBron's not even close to beating these guys. And do I really want to team up with him for 3 or 4 years, deal with his hijinks, his nonsense? Because Paul George is not a guy that we oftentimes hear about on Twitter, going back and forth with fans or trying to defend himself or his legacy. He seemed like a real chilled out, laid back dude. He just wants to make babies with his little stripper girlfriend or wife or whatever she is, play pool and fish. And that's all well and good. But that's not something that you're going to be able to continue to do in peace if you team up with LeBron James, because you're joining a circus when you team up with LeBron. There's no doubt about it. That's the atmosphere that he likes. That's what he revels in, is that circus atmosphere. So once again, I think that Paul George made a very, very good decision.
I hated the idea for the Lakers kind of that he would just go without a meeting. What's the point? You talk this big game.
The point is to avoid the charm of Magic Johnson, Negro. That's the point. You cannot get in the room with Magic Johnson and expect to not be charmed. That man has an incredible ability to ingratiate himself with people. He's able to connect with people. That's a gift that he has. He's not just gifted as a basketball player. He's gifted as a communicator, Magic Johnson is.
Game about the idea. You tell the Pacers you want out.
Right.
And you tell them, I want to go here. And so it kind of blew up their whole plan that kind of limited probably the teams that they could really deal them to for the most part. And if you're the Lakers, why not at least hear us out? You know we're going to be in the conversation for LeBron. You know we're going to be a player this summer to come after that. So it was just weird to me that he wouldn't even give them a meeting. And he had the whole thing with us, with ESPN, where he's telling, he's got the segments lined up where here's what I'm doing, and it's all just to stay with your team the night of free agency.
The reality show didn't work out.
No,
right?
Not very well.
The whole, and you're going to go through this whole process. It's going to be documented, and literally 12:01, he's smoking a cigar.
It was just a letdown.
Is there any element of...
Or maybe that was just him with a little bit of an attention grab. He was enjoying his little 2 minutes in the sun, his time to be feted. He already knew where he was going to go. Almost like one of these high school football players who wants to make a big show of what college he's going to attend. He's most likely known for a very long time, but he wants to make a show of it because he's a top recruit all across the country. And you never know. Your career may end in college, so you may never get that chance to be lauded and praised. That's what I see with Mr. Paul George. Paul George knows that he's not an alpha. He knows that he's not a guy that's going to lead a team to a championship, especially not with the specter of the Golden State Warriors. So when you know that you can't win, you do what makes you comfortable. Once again, had the Golden State Warriors not been around, or even had LeBron not signed with the Lakers, I think that he would have went back to LA. Because had he been the lead guy on LA, they would not have expected him to win a championship. Believe it or not. Had he gone to LA with Kawhi, they may have even expected Kawhi to be the alpha and not Paul George. Even though Paul has more of an alpha personality than what we've seen from Kawhi. Kawhi is the better player, at least when last we saw Kawhi. But I don't think that they would have put those championship thoughts or those championship aspirations on a team that was led by a combination of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I think that the sentiment would have been they need a third player and a strong-minded head coach for that team to possibly be a champion. But when you get a LeBron James there, the expectations definitely become championship or bust. And when you're an intelligent basketball player and you know what's not going to work against Golden State, why put yourself in that environment, subject yourself to that level of scrutiny and pressure when you know that you have no chance to win?
Of this where, you mentioned LeBron's age, just as far as he's going to get older and then what's going to happen then. I wonder also from the standpoint of stature, right? Because him and Russ, closer in stature together as opposed to being LeBron's sidekick.
But how much do you think, too, and we've seen this with players, whether it's Chicago, New York, they go play in their hometown, and sometimes they look at it as more of a hassle than anything, where he could always have LA during the off season, but maybe during the season where he could just focus on basketball. I think there are a lot of players that are like that. Stephon Marbury loved playing in Phoenix. When he came to New York, it was more of a headache for him than anything.
Well, Stephon Marbury's problem was that for the most part, he was an idiot. He's someone who I think has a far greater understanding of what life is about right now than he did while he played. Because of his selfishness, he broke up what could have been the Stockton and Malone of the 2000s, that being him playing in combination with Kevin Garnett in Minnesota. But because he wanted the spotlight all to himself, he wanted to leave that team, which was very stupid. And he ended up bouncing around the NBA, very talented ball player, but mentally he just wasn't there. And it probably cost him the Hall of Fame.
Than anything, so maybe that factored into it. And also the money. He's getting more money to play in Oklahoma City. And I'll tell you what, if you're Sam Presti, this was a big one. After you traded away Victor Oladipo, who had this unbelievable year, Sabonis was tremendous, you had to re-sign Paul George.
No, for sure. I mean, it made sense from that standpoint. The one thing that a lot of us looked at, I think even on this show, was that even if money was what he wanted, he could have gone about this a different way. He could have gotten more money from Oklahoma City. Now, I don't think enough of us took into account the leg injury he had and the fact that, look, he's going to want security here. And so I guess he has that. He's got someone that he's closer in stature to with Russ as opposed to LeBron. And let's be honest here, LeBron, father time is coming at some point. Maybe it's been held off longer than we're used to.
Yeah.
LeBron's going to be 34 years old. Normally, the timetable for greatness in professional athletes, particularly in basketball, is around 34, 35. So expect to see a precipitous drop-off in LeBron James, I would say after next season. Not after this one, but after next season. After 35 is normally when players start to drop off because there starts to be significant changes in your body that you really cannot avoid and that become overtly noticeable to the viewers at large. So we'll see what happens. Michael Jordan retired from the Bulls at 35, so we never truly got to see that great drop-off. We saw it in Kobe. Kobe's body pretty much imploded at 34, but he had the mileage of someone who was about 36, 37. And let's keep in mind that prior to that last season with the LA Lakers, where he was still a great productive player, the 2012-2013 season, prior to that season, he'd had the worst season pretty much of his career as a frontline star player. That's what necessitated him, in his mind, going over to Germany for that procedure. So it's normally somewhere around 34, 35, 36 where we see that great drop-off. So I expect that with LeBron James as well. That is why there's going to be a great onus placed on next season to get him a lot of help.
Yeah,
it's coming.
I mean, let me ask you this. When the season started last year and you heard LeBron's going to leave as a free agent, and you think about Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo, Paul George were all free agents. Not one of those guys joined him in LA. I think we all thought at least one of those guys would end up there. Nobody did.
What?
Because you guys have put forth this nonsensical narrative that all these great players want to play with LeBron and everybody wants to join him with LeBron. And that has never been the case over the course of his career. Other than his buddy, Dwayne Wade, what great player has willfully said, I want to play with LeBron James? None. Zero, zip, zilch. None. You had an old Ray Allen, who decided to come join him in Miami. Chris Bosh, who pretty much went along for the ride. He was the consolation prize when Carmelo Anthony turned him down. Chris Paul has never decided that he wanted to play with LeBron James. Kyrie had to play with LeBron against his will. And, of course, fled the chicken coop the first chance that he got. They had to trade for Kevin Love. So this notion put forth by the liberal mainstream sports media that there are great players all across the NBA that want to play with LeBron and he's so magnanimous and he's the new Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, all that stuff is nonsense. What LeBron James is a transcendent natural athlete. He's a basketball wonderkind. He's almost too brilliant at basketball for his own good because it stops him from being able to understand how to optimize and maximize what his teammates can do. And I think that stopped him from winning more championships. But it is what it is. The proof is in the pudding.
Well, I mean, the idea was I don't think we thought he'd make that leap without the security.
Exactly.
I got someone
Exactly.
And so I think that was an eye-opener. But I just wonder, well, let's move on because this next part is...
But anyway, that's basically it on the segment, or at least a portion of this segment that's pertinent to what I wanted to speak about. We'll see how good the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to be this season. I expect them to be a dark horse in the West, especially if Roberson is able to fully heal from his rather devastating knee injury last year. And as I've stated in previous videos, expect them to try to make a trade for Kevin Love somewhere around the trading deadline, especially if all they have to give up for him is, say, maybe a first-round draft pick. But anyway, peace.